Hello, this is Randy. Welcome back to Brain Break with Randy and Keitho. I wanted to talk a little bit about a great neighborhood that I lived in. My wife insisted when we moved into a certain area that she wanted to find a house in that area. Took us about a year, but we found the house. Nothing unusual about it, but it was in that area. We raised our family there for quite a few years. It was fun. We had some really fun neighbors that unfortunately decided they had to move. But the best part about it was is when they moved, they were somebody else bought their house and moved in. They became really dear friends. They had a fireplace. We didn't. They liked to burn wood in it, but we lived in the middle of the city. So we would go out on weekend nights and gather lumber scraps from construction sites. They would burn that in their fireplace. It always cracked me up because at the end of the week, he would always have to rake out all the nails and other metal that hadn't burned. Pine from construction is pretty sooty. But that's what he wanted to do. One time when we were out with them, he had a really cool car. I think it was a diesel car. We were in it, and he said, before we head home, I'm going to go use the restroom. Well, we were right in front of the porta potty they had out there for the construction workers, and I couldn't resist. So I walked around the car and got in because it was running. I put it in reverse, backed up to the door of the porta potty, left him trapped in there. In fact, I may have actually tipped the porta potty so it was at an angle. And frankly, we went and did some other things for a while, left him in there. It was not a kind thing to do, but it was, at the time, we thought it was kind of funny, and he did forgive me. Not sure how. I'm not sure I would have forgiven me. But anyway, I think they ended up moving out of that neighborhood before we did. But next door to them was another couple that was extremely amazing. They had wonderful children. And towards the end of the time we were there, they were able to adopt two babies from a relative. They raised those kids. They were amazing boys, twins. And we loved them. We loved that family. We loved all of our neighbors. We had great neighbors. We really did. Some of the kids, the older kids, were a little wild, and that was probably partly my fault. I was one of their leaders in scouting. We did some fun things, but sometimes people get carried away. And we had some just extraordinary experiences. I remember one time we went to a movie and we were all in a van. My wife was not feeling well and she had them pull over at the side of the road. It was on a busy street, so she went over into this parking lot, threw up. She felt much better afterwards. But the funny thing about it was the same group, no matter who we were with from that group, every time we would go by that same boat shop or whatever it became later, they would always say, "Oh, look, there's where Drew up." And anyway, good friends don't let you forget things that you do. I'm grateful for those kind of good friends. The same neighbor I told you about where I backed into his car into the porta potty so he couldn't get out. And I'm sure he was standing against the door because he didn't want it to tip all the way over. His wife had, I think it was 3 hide-a-beds. And before he could go play on Saturday after we'd done the yards, mowed the lawns and weed eated, all that stuff, trimmed the bushes, we would have to move her hide-a-beds around. She would clean underneath them because they were too heavy to move. It would wear us out. We have to do this again this Saturday. It became an every Saturday thing. I don't know if they took those with them when they moved or not. They were sure heavy. I know their hide-a-bed was heavier than our hide-a-bed. All 3 of theirs by themselves were heavier than our one hide-a-bed. We have since had a couple of hide-a-beds. Hers were still heavier. Not sure they were more comfortable. I never slept on them. I just know they were heavy. And I'm grateful that she let him go play. By playing, we would get together and we would go shoot guns out in the desert. We would take the kids with us sometimes and go a ways up to where it was a little cooler or find some water out in the desert and take the kids to splash around in that. But we had a good times. Richard, if you ever hear this, I want you to know that I sure appreciate you. I'm glad for your friendship. I miss you. I see pictures of you with your lucky wife. I'm jealous of the things that you guys are doing, but I wish I was there with you. Same thing, Tony, if you happen to hear about this, and Ralph. We had good times. We raised our kids together, and we would get together and do all kinds of fun things. One time, before Richard and Kelly moved into this house, we had a cookout over at Jeannie and Glenn's. And our son, who was probably 18 months old, he wandered off. Somehow he got out the back gate and went up the alley. And we realized it, but we went looking for him. You know, the alley could go two different ways. And so we're running up and down the alleys. Some kind neighbor had seen this little boy out in the alley, took him in. I think he fell down, scraped his knee, bandaged his knee, gave him something cold to drink, and wandered around trying to find us. Well, the dads are out running up and down the alley, and I'm sure my wife was with me. This kind gentleman was wandering up and down the street. Now, we were in the alley. They were on the street. Finally, somebody noticed him with Rand, our son. They said, "Oh, we know where he belongs. Can we take him?" The guy was a little leery because, hey, you guys let him go. Anyway, we were able to get this son. I'm grateful for having such wonderful neighbors. And next to this family lived the Jensens, and they had some boys that were in my scouting group. And next to them were the Browns. The Jensens, Brother Jensen passed right after we moved into that neighborhood. Then Phil and Tony Brown, who's unfortunately for all of us have since passed, they had 11 children, and they were amazing kids. I loved them all. Was able to stay in touch with several of them beyond Facebook. Their son, Tim, was one of my Explorer Scouts and went on to become the mayor of San Clemente, California. Really awesome. When my son was in the Marine Corps, he went out of his way to help him. I appreciate that, Tim, if you hear this. Life is good. Good people like timber grow best together. I am grateful that my wife wanted to be in that neighborhood because it allowed us to be around wonderful people. Those kids think of me as one of their friends, most of them. I'm grateful for that they don't think of me as an old fogey, but as a friend. I'm grateful for that. Can't believe how much I've grown over the years by being able to be around such good people. I bet you didn't think I had it in me to back into a porta potty and have it tip up just a little bit. Richard, if you haven't forgiven me for that, please forgive me. I promise I've never done it since. I won't ever do it to anybody else. I know I've got a twisted sense of humor, but I'm trying to get better. Thank you again for joining me. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and when you can, tell your friends and family about us. You're awesome. One of my friends from California shared this to his high school page. And I've had people comment on other videos. When I look back on how they found out about it, it's because of his sharing. So thank you, John. You're a wonderful friend as well.